Welcome to the PJ Hoop Podcast. I'm your host, PJ. And if this is your very first time checking out my podcast, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to check it out. But I also want to let you know this is a basketball podcast. This is not just the NBA podcast. I'm covering NBA, college, high school, and international. If you're interested in me deep diving in international or college, go ahead and check out episode 16 for college and episode 5 for international. I'll leave a link for one of those up in the corner for you guys if you're interested in hearing me directly talk about that content like an isolated episode. Also, I want to give you guys the 4 parameters that I go over week in and week out. First being a segment I like to call PJ's Echelon. Understand my list is a progressive list because I'm a progressive man. I'm not a perfect man. And the 4 parameters that I like to use within PJ's Echelon is the eye test, strength of schedule, the team's record, and statistically where they sit. Another segment I like to go over is a segment I like to call What's New. And What's New, I'm giving you some type of NBA news. Also statistically, if some history was made over the last week. But then also I might just be ranting. Another segment is Games of the Week. Now, in Games of the Week, I'm giving you some type of games of some type of significance, games that I really enjoyed watching. And starting next week, I'll give you guys some games that I'm looking forward to for said week. Lastly, the last segment that I like to go over is a segment I like to call In the Lab. Now, In the Lab is where I'm going to be talking about today's NBA rookies, or I'm talking about high school, or I'm talking about college, or I'm talking about international. So if you're really interested in that, I did a really good deep dive. Last week, I had a pretty long episode for In the Lab. If you're interested in just hearing some of my prospects, some of my top 10. Last week, I did my top 10 big board for this far into the season because obviously in college, conference play just started a few weeks back. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, I'm recording this January 19th at about 10 p.m. So keep that in mind as I'm going through my power rankings. There's a slew of games tomorrow for the holiday. Now, let's dive straight into the very first segment. My first segment on the chopping block is PJ's Echelon. Now, in PJ's Echelon, like I just told you guys, it's a progressive list, so keep that in mind as we go through the list week in and week out. And remember, we're recording this at about 10 p.m. on January 19th. So the 4 parameters I like to use in PJ Echelon is strength of schedule, eye test, statistically where a team sits, but also the team's record. Let's dive straight into it. My very first team, this team is 35-7, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Oklahoma, on the season, they're 6th in offensive efficiency, they're 1st in defensive efficiency, and they're 1st in net rating. They actually have the 5th easiest remaining schedule in the NBA, and ever since the start of the new year, they're shooting 40% from 3, which if you've been paying attention to Oklahoma City up to that point, they were kind of struggling from 3. They're actually in the bottom half of the NBA in three-point percentage. They're also 1st, and this is just in season totality. They're 1st in opponents' field goal percentage at 43%. They're also 1st in opponents' three-point percentage at 32%. They only lost 1 game over this last week, and that was to Dallas without Shea, so I didn't hold that over their head. They're number 1 on my list. Number 2, this team is 35-6, and that is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland right now, they're 1st in offensive efficiency, they're 11th in defensive efficiency, and they're 2nd in net rating. So they're 18-0 against teams under 500, and they're 17-6 against teams above 500, and they're 2-1 in games decided by 3 points or less. So since January 1st, they're giving up the 5th most points a game, unfortunately, at 119 a game. Also, since the first, they're 20th in three-point percentage and 9th in field goal percentage. It's just something I wanted to throw out to you guys and something to monitor because up to that point, they have been just extremely hot offensive team. I felt like up to that point. So that's something I wanted to throw at you guys. They're still 2nd in field goal percentage right now at 50%, and they're 1st still in three-point percentage at 40%. They're number 2 on my list. Number 3, this team is 29-13, and that is the Boston Celtics. Boston right now, they're 3rd in offensive efficiency, they're 5th in defensive efficiency, and they're 3rd in net rating. So they're 6-4 in their last 10. And honestly, I said it last week, I feel like this team is just trying to get to the All-Star break. I think after the All-Star break, we'll see them be a top 4 offense, top 4 defense. I just think they're just trying to get to the All-Star break, and I think they're going to rev it up. They also went out. I don't know if this is right or not, but I seen a video of Jaylen Brown out at the club in Toronto. They ended up losing the game against Toronto, so I don't know if they went to the club before the game, well, like the night before or the night after. I don't know, but that was something I just noticed that was really interesting. They also have the 4th easiest remaining schedule, so like I said, I'm not worried about them quite yet. They're 17-10 against teams above 500, and they're 5-2 in games decided by 3 points or less. Again, like I said, I'm not worried about them quite yet. Boston number 3 on my list this week. Number 4, this team is 28-13, and that is the Houston Rockets. Houston right now, they're 9th in offensive efficiency, they're 4th in defensive efficiency, and they're 5th in net rating. So honestly, since January 1st, they're pretty much doing, in essence, of what Oklahoma City was doing the first half of the year. A little bit. I'm not saying like identical, but the first half of the year, Oklahoma was actually averaging more steals than they were turnovers for a good chunk of the season. Right now, Houston is pretty close to doing that. Since January 1st, they're averaging 13 turnovers and 12 steals. And they're also 7-3 in their last 10. They're also first in field goals attempted per game, so at 94 right now. And also, I think that's something to pay attention to. They're still first in offensive rebounds as well at 15. And that's important in my opinion because a team like Houston, since they're like offensively not fully mature yet, I think it's important that they are getting these extra efforts at the apple. You know what I'm saying? And something also to monitor is that this team has the 7th remaining hardest schedule in the NBA. They're number 4. Number 5, this team is 28-15, and that is the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis, right now, they're 5th in offensive efficiency. They're 6th in defensive efficiency, and they're 4th in net rating. So they have the 3rd toughest remaining schedule left. Since January 1st, they're 3rd in the NBA in three-point percentage at 39.5%. On the season, they're 8th in three-point percentage. They're allowing the 2nd best three-point percentage also since January 1st, which is a little concerning at 42%. On the season, they are 2nd in assists at 30, but they're also 2nd in turnovers at 17. They're still 1st, averaging the fewest pick and roll by percentage per game at only 8%. But they're also 1st in offense, in transition offense at about 25% per game. I got Memphis at number 5 this week on my big board. Number 6, this team is 27-16, and that is the New York Knicks. New York, they're 2nd in offensive efficiency, they're 16th in defensive efficiency, and they're 6th in net rating. They have the 2nd hardest remaining schedule left for the rest of the season, so that's something I wanted to throw out to you guys. They're allowing opponents to shoot. Since January 1st, they're allowing opponents to shoot the best from the three-point line at 42.5%. They're shooting the 5th worst three-point percentage at 34% since January 1st. I think these heavy minutes may just be catching up to them. We'll see what happens. It's just something I want to throw at you guys, something to monitor. This is still a top 5 offense, and that's why I still got them at number 6 this week for me. They're 3rd in field goal percentage at 49%. They're 5th in three-point percentage at 38%. I got New York at number 6 on my big board. Number 7, this team is 26-16, and that is the Denver Nuggets. Denver right now, they're 4th in offensive efficiency. They're 15th in defensive efficiency, and they're 7th in net rating. They're 7-1 since the start of the new year with Joker in the lineup because he didn't play one game. Yes, they haven't played like the top tier competition, but they're taking care of who's in front of them. And at this point in the season, that's what you got to do. You got to win the games that are in front of you. They've been a top 5 offense and even a top 5 defense since January 1st. I for sure feel like this team is slotted at number 7 because I do think they're a top 7 team. Will they go higher? I don't know. But for right now, they've been blazing hot since the start of the new year. And Nikola Jokic, he's just playing. So I tell people, for me, Nikola Jokic has always reminded me personally of a mix of Arvydas Sabonis and Larry Bird. Now, some of you guys may be too young to understand who Arvydas Sabonis was, but Sabonis came over to the States when he was like in the back end of his career, you know? But even when he came over, he was still causing problems. But so that's, to me, that's what Nikola Jokic is, in my opinion. And I just wanted to put that out there to you guys because I don't think I've ever said it on camera, but I've always have told my little brother that and other people that. Anyways, with that being said, this month, the month of January, Nikola Jokic is playing. He's just doing Jokic type of stuff right now, okay? He's averaging 27 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, 1 block, 2 steals, and 2 turnovers. He's shooting 55% from the field, 38.5% from 3, and 85% from the free throw line. Shout out to Nikola Jokic. He's playing out of his mind like always. Number 8 on my list. This team is 24-17, and that is the Los Angeles Clippers. Los Angeles right now, the 22nd in offensive efficiency, 2nd in defensive efficiency, and 8th in net rating. I gave them a pass last week because of the whole fire situation. They didn't prove me wrong, and I'm happy I gave them that pass because they just went 4-0 this last week. It's only been 5 games, but Kawhi's looking smooth. He's averaging 14 points, 1 steal. He's shooting 49% from the field, 35 from 3. They're also allowing the fewest points per game since January 1st at only 101 points a game. And they're third overall on the season. They're third overall on the season in points allowed at only at 107. Clippers are number 8 for me on my big board. Number 9. I've been very hard on this team, but they finally have cracked my top 10 after this. I've been saying it for like 2.5 months, but it's the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 24-17. They're 12th right now in offensive efficiency. They're 8th in defensive efficiency, and they're 11th in net rating. They have the 6th hardest remaining schedule left. And honestly, in my opinion, what I'm going to be paying attention to, and I said it during my preseason when I did my season preview for the Milwaukee Bucks, is I was going to be paying attention to see what they do with Bobby Portis, Chris Middleton, and even what's going to happen with Brook Lopez, because Chris Middleton has a player option, and I know they're looking at potentially picking up Bradley Beal. I don't know. I didn't really read too much into that, but he has a player option this summer. Bobby Portis is due for a payday, and honestly, Brook Lopez might be retiring. So that's something I'll be paying attention to. But anyways, since January 1st, they're averaging the 6th most points in the NBA at 118 a game. They're allowing their opponents, they're 9th in opponents' points per game, though, at 110 per game. They're 6th in the NBA in net rating since the start of the new year. Milwaukee's number 9 for me. Number 10, this team is 24-19, and that is the Indiana Pacers. Indiana right now, they're 10th in offensive efficiency, they're 20th in defensive efficiency, and they're 15th in net rating. They have the 7th easy remaining schedule left in the NBA. I literally told you guys this last week that I felt like the Pacers offense was starting to hum and get back into rhythm. Actually, I told you this 2 weeks ago is when I told you guys to kind of keep your eyes out for it, because I just noticed it. Since January 1st, they're 8-1. Their only loss was to the Cavs on the second leg of a home and home. Actually, yeah, I think it was a home and home, or they beat the Cavs once on their floor and they had to play them again. Anyways, they played the Cavs 2 nights back to back. They beat them the first night, lost the second night. The main thing, and also it seems that this team is getting a lot more healthy as well, in my opinion. So also since January 1st, they're 3rd in field goal percentage at 50%, and they're 1st in assists per game at 30. And they just look a lot more healthy. They've gotten a lot of their guys back. Nesmith came back. Ben Shepherd's came back. Nimhart's came back. This team is just, they're getting right at the right time, I feel like, right before the All-Star break. The biggest thing for me I'll be paying attention to is how do they handle going overseas, playing the Spurs twice in Paris this week. If they're all about their business, they should go over there and beat the Spurs twice, because the Spurs have been struggling as of recently. But we'll see. That's something I'll be paying attention to with them. My team's on the bubble this week. I kept Sacramento on the bubble this week. They got fried by the Bucks, and I just didn't feel comfortable putting them above Indiana or the Bucks. And then also Dallas, unfortunately, I think it's the first time this season that they're on the bubble for me. They just have lost too many games for me. They've lost too many games for me this last week. I think they lost all 3 of their games this last week by pretty comfortable margin. Side note, obviously, I think within the next week or 2, we should be getting an update on Luka. But also, I'm going to let you guys know, the month of February is set up beautifully for the Dallas Mavericks. From February 8th to February 23rd, they're going to be at home. And even like traveling wise, their only place they're going to have to go, I think they go to LA at the end of February, and they have the 12th hardest remaining schedule left in the NBA. But Dallas' schedule for the month of February is beautiful. They just have like a short road trip to the East Coast earlier in the month, but then for most of the month they're at home. So Dallas is somebody just to keep your eyes on, really, if Luka comes back. Another team I had to put on the bubble, unfortunately, is the Orlando Magic. Offensively, they just have not found the rhythm yet. Paulo, obviously, he's still trying to get his feeding back under him, get his feet back under him. So I just have to put them on the bubble this week, too. Hopefully, they can get back out, because I really like this Orlando Magic team. You guys let me know down in the comment section below who's in your top 10 and who do you have on your bubble, all right? My next segment is a segment I like to call What's New. Now, What's New, I'm giving you some type of NBA news that may have happened, me ranting, or some type of history that may have happened over this last week. So, with that being said, I'm going to start off with Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic becomes the fastest player to reach 15,000 career points, 7,500 career rebounds, and 5,000 career assists. Russell Westbrook surpassed Vince Carter for 21st on the all-time scoring list. James Harden also passed Oscar Robinson for 14th on the all-time scoring list, so shout out to those players. Pau Gasol was inducted into the FIBA Hall of Fame over this last weekend. Damian Lillard now has the third most 30-point games by a point guard in NBA history. Also, I wanted to kind of just point to you guys. I kind of talked about it to you guys a little bit last week. I felt that Josh Okogie potentially could be on the move to Charlotte. That ended up happening. So now Nick Richards is now with the Phoenix Suns. He actually just had a really good game a couple nights ago. Also, I also want to let you guys know, remind you guys, I actually talked about this when I did my season preview for the schedule, but the Phoenix Suns and San Antonio Spurs on February 20th will be playing at the University of Texas. So mark your calendars. I think that's going to be a very interesting game. I don't even think it's ever happened where they've had NBA games like scheduled at a college campus. It's going to be great. Kevin Durant's going to be back at University of Texas. I'm excited to watch that game. But also, I want to take this moment and shout out to my boy Khalil Ware. If you guys have been following me since the very, very beginning, my very first episode, I did a pre-draft episode. Mind you guys, the audio is horrible, but you can go back and listen to it if you want to hear what I have to say about some of the rookies. But I talked about him as one of my sleepers, and I felt like my biggest sleeper in the draft. I talked about him in my post-draft episode. I talked about him for my Phoenix Suns season preview, and I talked about him when I talked about Rookie of the Year potential as well. Anyways, he's been balling recently. I want to give a big shout out to my boy Khalil Ware because I've been on him since the very beginning. Also, Clutch Sports ended up signing Hassan Yang. I think he's about 7'1", center from China. I talked about him in episode 16 when I talked about my top 10 international players that I will be keeping my eyes on for this upcoming season. Anyways, he signed with Clutch Sports. I'm assuming he's going to declare for the NBA draft, and they're going to represent him in that. Lastly, I want to tell you guys, the USA team the USA men's ended up announcing their roster for the Nike Hoop Summit this year. So some of the players that are going to be there is AJ DeBonsis. It's going to be Cam Boozer, Caden Boozer, Chris Senick, Koa Pete, Nate Ament, Mikael Brown Jr., Chris Senick, Jasper Johnson, and there's a couple other players that are also going to be a part of that team. The Nike Hoop Summit, I think, takes place in, I believe, April is when the Nike Hoop Summit is. Don't question me on that, but I think it's April. I'm going to try to go. Another thing, Michael Cooper had his number 21 jersey retired by the Lakers over this last week. And then something interesting I kind of just want to throw at you guys. Mike Conley and Malcolm Brogdon are the only active NBA players to have 0 technical fouls in their career, a minimum of 13,000 career minutes played. So that's something I just wanted to point out to you guys. Again, there's more news I could throw at you guys, but I'm trying to keep these episodes between 25 and 35 minutes. Anyways, down in the comment section below, share with everybody and let everybody else know if there was any other news that you wanted to share with people. Let me know and let everybody else know down in the comment section below. My next segment is a segment I like to call Games of the Week. Now, in Games of the Week, I'll be talking about games of some type of significance or games I like. And starting next week, we'll be talking about games that I'm looking forward to watching for said week, okay? Well, let's dive straight into it. So, I wanted to talk about Houston versus Memphis again because they did play a third time, and the third time did not disappoint at all. But since I've already covered the last 2 matchups, I've covered the one for last week, and I covered the one I had earlier in this year. I'm not going to do that again this week. I had to just fade it. Long story short, Houston did win, and they play one more time on January 30th. So I'll be looking forward to watching that again. But yeah, this last one did not disappoint at all. Anyways, I want to get straight into these 2 games with you guys. My first game on the slate, this happened on January 18th, and this was the Hawks versus the Celtics. Atlanta won this game 119-115. And so, interesting stat, the Hawks are actually 6-1 against the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. And they also are I believe the only team in the past 2 years to beat Boston multiple times in Boston. I don't know why, but the Hawks, they get up for the Celtics. Anyways, first quarter, it was all Boston. Boston came out, they took the early lead. I think they led after the first quarter. I think it was like 31 or 33 to like 21 or something like that. I think they led at the first. I think only by like 12 points or something at the end of the first. Second quarter, Boston went ice cold. I mean, completely ice cold. Atlanta outscored them 31-15 in the second. Boston, I think, shot like 23 or 24% from the field in the second quarter, and they were like 0 for 8 from the three-point line. And we know Boston's very big on their three-point shooting. Third quarter, it was Tatum's quarter. He had 14 points in the third quarter, but it was all downhill from there for Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They actually combined to shoot 5 of 21 in the fourth quarter and in overtime, which was a little disappointing, but it happens. You know, it happens to all superstars and star players it's a part of the game, you know. The game's about runs, okay? The game of basketball, even honestly, I would say most sports, the games are about runs, you know. Even football, even I would say baseball also, it's just about runs, you know, who got the momentum. But yeah, these two, they're two star players. They went ice cold. Maestre had himself a really good fourth quarter, though. He had 11 points in the fourth quarter. And yeah, Atlanta ended up winning the game. Obviously, Tatum and Okongwu, they got into their little scuffle or whatever. But I don't know, man. I'm somebody, I believe that. So if I was the NBA commissioner, I'm going to go off the rail a little bit with you guys. If I was the NBA commissioner, I would bring back hand checking. I would lessen the technical fouls. Like, obviously, yeah, if somebody's like clotheslining them or like hitting them in their head, okay, obviously you can tee them up. But if they're like pushing or talking mess to one another, I don't think that garners a technical. Like, even what Tatum and Okongwu was doing, I don't think that's garnered a technical. Like, I don't know, growing up playing basketball, like we did that kind of stuff. We would talk, pushing would happen. Like, it's a part of the game, you know? And I feel like that would also help the ratings if they cleaned that up a little bit. But anyways, I got off the rail. Anyways, the Hawks won this game. I chose this game because, like I said, I don't know. Every time the Hawks play the Celtics, they just get up for that game, and I really enjoyed watching the game. My other game that I want to talk to you guys about, this happened on January 16th, and this was the Pacers versus the Pistons. Pacers won this game 111 to 100. I chose this game because, ironically, this game was on the anniversary of the Malice in the Palace. For my young viewers out there, if you're not familiar with the Malice in the Palace, long story short, some fans were heckling Ron Artest. I believe the fan threw something at Ron Artest. Ron Artest runs up into the stands. And then it comes an all-out brawl. Both teams end up going up into the stands, and it just got crazy. I remember watching. I was really young when that happened. I was, dang. I think I was like 5 or 6 when that happened, I believe. I think I was like 5 or 6 when that happened. But anyways, this was the anniversary of that. So I thought that was something really interesting. And watching this game, I felt like the Pistons, for most of the second half and really the fourth quarter, I felt like the Pistons kept getting the game within 5 to 7 points. And then the Pacers will hit some ridiculous shot or they would go on some type of run. And just the Pistons could not overcome that avalanche at all. They just couldn't overcome it. So I thought that was really interesting. First half, the Pacers were lighting them up, though. They were lighting them up. They shot 52% from the field, and they scored 69 points. The Pistons in the first half also had 13 turnovers. But then the second half, it kind of flipped. The Pacers cooled down. They shot 38% from the field. And the Pistons cleaned up their turnovers. They only have 4 turnovers in the second half. But I just think at the end of the day, the Pacers just have too much firepower for the Pistons. I don't think the Pistons are quite there yet, obviously, and they're missing Jaden Ivey. So you're asking for Cade to really carry the boatload of the offense. And I think it was just too much for them to overcome. But I chose that game, again, like I said, because the anniversary, I thought that was really interesting. And for the most part, it was a pretty solid game. It wasn't like an amazing game. Like I said, there was better games this week, but I chose this game for that reason. Now, again, I watch 10, 20, 30, 40. I watch a lot of games throughout the week. And so just understand, when I'm only picking 2 or 3 games, like, don't take that as I'm not watching basketball. Like, I watch a lot of basketball, and a lot of people can tell you guys, like, I'll be watching 3 and 4 games at once sometimes. So, but anyways, I try to keep these episodes as short as possible, 25 to 35 minutes. You guys let me know down in the comment section below, what games did you really enjoy this week? My last segment is a segment I like to call In the Lab. Now, in this segment, essentially, I'm just covering high school, college, international, and then NBA rookies. Today, we're going to check in on 5 of the 30 prospects I told you guys I would be keeping my eyes out on. In episode 16 is where I gave you guys all 30 players in college, and then also I gave you 10 international people I would be keeping my eyes out on. So last week we covered 10. This week we're going to do 5 and just chip away on the list. So I'm going to talk about that towards the end of the episode. First, I want to give you guys some news. So over the weekend, there was a tournament called the Hoopland Classic. The Hoop Hall Classic, correct myself. Highland School ended up winning the tournament. They won in the finals. They had a 4-point game. They ended up winning by 4. It was 61-57 against Prolific Prep. Highland has a highly touted kid named Nate Ament. He's the number 4 rated kid in class of 2025. He had a phenomenal, honestly, tournament. He had a really good championship game. He finished the game with 22 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 block and 2 steals. He shot 45% from the field, 100% from 3, but only 2 attempts. He was 10 for 10 from the free throw line, and he was just all over this game. I watched a little bit of this game. I went kind of back and forth with this and then some college basketball. He had a really good game. He showed out. He ended up winning the MVP of this. But also, on the other end, he played against prolific prep star. He's the number 2 rated kid. I've talked about him for months on the pod. He's the number 2 rated kid in class of 2025. And that's Darian Peterson. Darian Peterson finished the game with 31 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. He had 5 turnovers. He had 1 block and 2 steals. He shot 48% from the field. He shot 25% from the three-point line on 8 attempts, but he shot 100% from the free throw line as well. He was 7 for 7. So I wanted to throw that out there to you guys. Shout out to Highland and for winning that tournament. So Utah Prep has announced they're making a coaching change. So Keith Smart has been named the head coach of Utah Prep. And you guys are probably wondering, why am I bringing this up? Utah Prep is the team that AJ DeBonsis, he plays for Utah Prep. So that's kind of a big thing that they got a new coach to coach him. 2025 top 15 overall recruit Muhammad Silla. I think his last name is Silla. Sorry if I botched his name. He committed to Georgia Tech over the weekend, so thought that was interesting. Most players usually don't go to Georgia Tech, so thought I would highlight that to you guys. 5-star Caleb Wilson. He's a top 5 also player in class of 2025. He's narrowed his recruitment down to 3 schools. He's choosing between University of North Carolina, Kentucky, and Ohio State. My prediction is I think he's going to commit to North Carolina. I'm not too happy about it because I'm a Duke Blue Devil fan. And Caleb Wilson actually played on the AAU team with Caden and Cameron Boozer. They played on the same AAU team over the summer. I covered that tournament. They ended up winning that tournament. I think it was the Peach Jam that they were on teams? I think it was the Peach Jam maybe. But anyways, in the championship game, all 3 of those players were on the same team, and they played against actually AJ DeBonsis and Tyron Stokes. I covered that game extensively in one of my summer episodes if you guys want to hear more about that. But anyways, yeah, I think he's going to choose North Carolina. I have no inside on that. I'm assuming I think it's going to be North Carolina, unfortunately. I'm a Duke fan. But anyways, another piece of news. Hall of Famer Dick Vitale will be returning to ESPN. We got to clap that in. Dick Vitale, I believe he was battling cancer, if I'm correct. Don't quote me on that. But he'll be returning back to the sidelines January 25th when Wake Forest hosts Duke. So I thought that was some good news. Now, let's check in on 5 of the 30 prospects. Again, these are not the 30 best ones that I thought were the 30 best going into college. If you're interested in knowing what my top 10 big boards looking like, go ahead and check out last episode. Towards the end of the episode, in the lab, I talked about who my top 10 players were up to this point into the season. Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry. I got the hiccups. But yeah, anyways, I'm going to give you guys these 5 players and we'll just truck along from here, okay? First player I want to talk about is Ian Jackson. He's a 6'4" shooting guard from North Carolina. He's a freshman. He plays about 26 minutes a game. So far this season, he actually started kind of slow. They weren't really running the offense through him or really giving him much touches, but he's ramped it up quite a bit over the last, I would say, like 2 months. He's kind of ramped it up. Right now, he's up to 15 points on the season, 4 rebounds, 1 assist. He has 1 turnover. He's shooting 49.5% from the field on 11 attempts. He's shooting 39% from 3 on 5 attempts, 76 from the free throw line on 3.5 attempts. That's Ian Jackson. I think he's going to be a first rounder. Number 2, another player I want to talk about is one of his teammates, Drake Powell. He's a 6'6" shooting guard / small forward. Oh, also, I'm sorry, Ian Jackson's a shooting guard. He's 6'4". But yeah, so Drake Powell is a shooting guard / small forward, in my opinion. He's 6'6", super long arms, really, really good defender. He's a freshman. He goes to North Carolina. He plays about 24 minutes a game. He averages 7 points, 3.5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 1 turnover. He shoots 48% from the field on 5 attempts. He shoots 41% from 3 on 2 attempts. He shoots 68% from the free throw line on 1 attempt. Another player. This player is going to probably be a lottery pick. I feel pretty confident saying that, and that's Colin Murray Boyles. He's 6'7", sophomore. He's a power forward at South Carolina. He's your today's NBA prototypical 4. He's a Swiss Army knife. He does a little bit of everything. He plays about 30 minutes a game. He averages 15 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block. He averages 3 turnovers. He shoots 60% from the field, 27% from 3, only on 1 attempt. He shoots 67% from the free throw line on 5 attempts. Another player is one of my Duke players. Is Isaiah Evans. He's 6'6", shooting guard / small forward. He's a freshman at Duke. He plays 13 and a half minutes a game. He averages 8 points, 1 rebound. He shoots 45% from the field on 5.5 attempts. He shoots 45% from 3 on 5 attempts. He shoots 84% from the free throw line on 1 attempt. Isaiah Evans, I don't like how John Shire's using him. He doesn't really run plays for him. Isaiah Evans is an interesting player because he can shoot the lights out, but I just wonder if he has more to his game. And I think he does. And don't quote me on this, but I believe he broke like his state record in scoring last year during his senior year. I think he had like 60 or 70 in a game or something like that. Don't quote me on that though. But Isaiah Evans, I feel like he has more to his game than what John Shire is doing. It makes me so mad. It makes me so mad to watch because he just used him as a spot-up shooter. It just infuriates me. It just makes me mad. Anyways, last player I want to go over with you guys really quick is a kid named Jackson Robinson. He's 6'7", shooting guard / small forward. He's a senior at University of Kentucky. He went to BYU, but he transferred to Kentucky this year. He plays about 28 minutes a game. He averages 13 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, a half a block, a half a steal, 43% from the field on 11 attempts, 34% from the three-point line on 7 attempts, and 85% from the free throw line on 1 attempt. I just like his jumper, personally. I just like his form on his jumper. Is he an NBA player? I don't know. If he is, he would be a second rounder. If anything, he would be a second round pick. But I just like the way he shoots the ball. But yeah, so thank you for taking the time to watch my podcast. These, again, were 5 of the 30 players that I just was going to keep my eyes out on. We'll do another 5 next week. The 5 to look forward to that I'm going to cover next week, I'll give you their names right now. One is Boogie Flan. He goes to Arkansas. Another one is Nolan Trayari. He right now hoops over in France. Kareem Lopez, he hoops down in Kareem Lopez, he's from Mexico, but I think right now he's playing for the New Zealand Breakers. Hugo Gonzalez, another player we'll talk about. And then lastly will be Jackson Shellstead of the University of Oregon. Well, thank you for taking the time to watch my podcast. I'm your host, PJ, and PJ's out.